All right, on today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, if you were one of those people that just felt like you were not getting enough information on how Gabe Landeskog's rehab was going, you might be in luck. We will explain. New episode of Locked On Avalanche coming at you.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. Always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter X, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram, and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, LockedOnAvalanche at gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and make sure you're subscribed to our subtext as well. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do, chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. All right, if you're watching over on YouTube, we will get to Jack Johnson and his season grade. We will have left wingers for our unrestricted free agents that are available. And then we'll go defenders and goalies. We'll do goalies just because I guess just round it out next week. But hey, who knows? Maybe some time in a rough somewhere. You never know.
The Avalanche thought they didn't need a goalie before. And then
but where we're going to start today, sir, is I guess the Avalanche go to Hollywood, kind of. And we knew two things. We knew the NHL was coming out with this documentary series where it was going to be behind the scenes and follow players around. And we also knew that when Gabe Landeskog started kind of taking the ice again, like the practice, not with the team, just kind of out on his own, just skating at the practice facility, there was a camera crew following him for a lot of that. And now we know those two things match up, and Gabe Landeskog will be a part of this documentary series that is coming to Amazon Prime. Drive to Survive is what it's called. And he, along with a handful of other players, I'll list them off in a minute. It's going to be airing in the fall. They didn't give a definite date. There is kind of like over a minute trailer available on YouTube if you want to watch it. Gabe Landeskog's not even in the trailer that I could see. But it sounds like there's going to be a handful of guys in this. I've heard it's going to be only like 6 or 7, maybe 8 episodes. And I like stuff like this. I like kind of behind the scenes. And with hockey players, press conferences are just so boring. But stuff like this is when they're a little bit more in their element and they're a little bit more outgoing, and might give you a little bit more in a show like this than they will in your kind of cookie cutter interview with media.
Yeah, I think the one piece of content I enjoy during the offseason the most is the Quest for the Cup series that they put out every year during the playoffs. It's like that behind the scenes, like they follow a player, you watch like the matchups of a series and you watch it progress. I find that absolutely fascinating, that just locker room look at how things operate. So to see it in an Amazon production, which they have done good jobs with sports productions. So I was surprised to see Gabe Landeskog be one of those participants and to not be featured in the trailer. I guess he's going to be the surprise guy at the end of episode 1, where he just kind of like hobbles in there. He goes, "I'm not done yet," and then teased episode 2.
That's breaks out his red lightsaber. He breaks out that thing. Yeah. It makes sense. Like, you got to have somebody like him, like of what he's going through, kind of in the mix for something like this, like an extended time off from an injury, and kind of that guy that's coming back from an injury. So obviously this is. They're not ahead of us. They're not in the future. We're not going to know like when he's going to come back, but we're gonna see the progression from it. I think there's I haven't watched it yet, but there's a Netflix docuseries on Henrik Lundqvist that's out right now, and all about the surgery that he needed, the heart problems he had, and you're there with him, like in the trailer. They it's when he calls the doctor and he's like, act like you're my brother. Like, would you want me playing hockey? And the doctor was just like, I would not. Like, you're there when he pretty much is making the decision, I can't do this anymore. That stuff is fascinating. And it's amazing to me. So see, like, we're not there with Landeskog, but we are in, there's probably going to be some downer moments for him. Good, like the setback that he had. And then, having to say, the second season that I'm out, I'm wondering how far back it goes. Because I don't know around when they started following all these guys, but I think it's going to be interesting to get some of this stuff, because it was really a lot of the info. The Avalanche were and they didn't have to. I'm not saying they needed to, but you didn't get a lot of his progression and how things were going. And in this, you'll see a little bit of it. There's a lot of guys in the show, so it's not going to be solely focused on Landeskog, but you'll get little bits here and there, of which I'm looking forward to.
And when they announced Gabe Landeskog as one of the participants of the show, I immediately took every clip that I just watched 18 times of Landeskog on the ice, and I said, was this all for the show? How serious was the return even a possibility last season? Was this just B-roll footage that they were shooting, and we just happened?
I hope not.
And then it would have only capped it all off in that McFarlane presser if he would have showed up with a Drive to Survive hat instead of the Yeti foot.
Yeah.
It would have cemented everything. But
yeah,
going back, it kind of I'm going to be curious to see how close he even came to a return last season, if it was all for B-roll and just to get that footage of him doing skating moves just to kind of filter in there. And that's going to be the number one thing. It's not so much looking forward, because that's still going to be kind of up in the air. I'm going to be curious on how close a return actually was at any point last year.
I really hope they were not saying, hey, just go out there and skate around just so we can get to, like,
yeah,
unless, if he's in the clear to do that stuff, fine. But you are really messing with a dude's career if you're asking him to go do things that are above where he's at with his recovery. God, I hope they were not doing that. Other guys that they're going to be following. Let's see. Connor McDavid, no surprise there. Matthew Tkachuk, Jacob Trouba.
Oh, and you froze up there, and until you come back, you mentioning Jacob Trouba, hearing what his thought process is when it comes to going into and out of games. He is just as controversial as a Tkachuk. So hearing Jacob Trouba and trying to make him a human being will be fascinating on Amazon's part.
It is not known if Jacob Trouba's elbow is going to be interviewed for this series, but we will see. Leon Draisaitl's also in it. Pasternak and Jeremy Swayman from Boston Bruins are on it. Quinn Hughes, Jack Eichel, Willie Nylander, Philip Forsberg, and of course Gabe Landeskog. So other ones that are of interest to you.
Give me Trouba. Let me see if McDavid's even human. See if they have to plug him in and boot him up to do any kind of camera footage. And honestly, out of that entire list, I'm very curious on the life and times of Philip Forsberg.
Man, I so wish Philip Forsberg was not on the Predators. Because he is I like the guy. He's a fantastic player. He's an Avalanche killer. He always seems to just be one of those guys that scores on them. And he's just a down-to-earth, cool dude. And he plays for a team in our division, and that just kills me. Because I want to hate him so much, and you just can't. He's a really cool guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing him, definitely.
He's a really cool guy on a team that there's never a quiet Avalanche Predators game. It's always controversy. There's always something that plagues those games for weeks.
And, everyone's looking at the Jacob Trouba one, and because he seems to be like a hot button item right now. Off the ice, he does a lot. He does a ton of charity work, and off the ice, I think people are going to see a different side of him clearly. On the ice, have all the problems you want with him in the world. But I think off the ice, I'm sure they're going to get into a lot of the humanitarian stuff that he does. And then I think people will just be confused by Jacob Trouba. It's just like, you do all of this stuff, all of this good for kids, no less. and then you turn around and just have no regard for human life when you're out on the ice. It's just this yin and yang of who Jacob Trouba is. And it's just, I think people are going to be more baffled after seeing it because, like I said, off the ice, he does a lot. He really does.
It's like when Captain America said, "Hail Hydra."
It was right. It was just so confusing. Like, okay, we'll give you the
Amazon Prime. I'm curious to see what the casual sports fans and the non-hockey fans take away from all of these personalities being displayed in this format.
I think it's going to be good. I think there's a couple question marks. I think Quinn Hughes. Anytime you involve one of the Hughes brothers, you're involving all of them. So I think that's like a 3-for-1 that they're doing there. So you'll see the whole Hughes family, and
the Jonas Brothers of hockey.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Jack Eichel. I don't know. Maybe he does interesting stuff off the ice. No clue. But you got to throw a Maple Leaf in there, so he's gonna. You'll get a lot of that stuff too. So I think overall it's going to be a good series, and we'll see where it goes from there. And maybe we'll get a season 2 with a fresh new crop of guys. But I would also like to see if they do a season 2, stick with guys like Landeskog, clearly, because that's going to boil over into this season. So we'll see what happens. And obviously with the, you have the Oilers and you have 2 of the Oilers in the Stanley Cup. I don't know if they're going to be able to turn around episodes following the cup when that's over, enough time to get them out for when the season starts. But overall, I'm looking forward to this. I've said it before. They did that all or nothing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. They followed the Maple Leafs for a full season. That was very entertaining. That was guys not just sitting in front of a microphone and just in their regular element. And it was very engaging, very entertaining. So I think that's going to be similar to what this is.
Yeah, and I can't wait for season 2 with future Colorado Avalanche Trevor Zegras.
Hey, now you're going to will that into existence, aren't you?
I'm trying now.
All right. We were going to get to the Valnichuskin off-season stuff with him going to potentially play in a summer league, but we're going to hold off on that for now. We'll talk about that on Monday's episode. And maybe we get more information on it because there's really not a ton yet, but maybe over the weekend some more comes out about it. Either way, we'll talk about that on Monday. We're going to get our first break in here, and we come back. We will finish off the forwards in the free agency department with the left wingers, and we'll do that next. All right, let's hear from Gametime. It makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in pricing, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Some of the things that we love about the Gametime app: you get priority last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sporting events, concerts, comedy, and theater. The flash deals, the zone deals, all in pricing. The price you see is the price you pay. No surprise fees at checkout. And they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL, for $20 off of your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right. Jack Johnson season grade is coming up. We're going to get to unrestricted free agents available this offseason. And we've done the centers, we've done the right wings. Now it's time for the left wingers. So when we did the right wing, we knew what the Avs have on the roster is a little bit light when it comes to the the left side. It's kind of like the same situation because you have Arturi Lehkonen, who again is listed as left or right. You have Ross Colton, who is listed as a center or left wing. Miles Wood. They have middle stat. This is not going off cap friendly. Middle stats listed as a center or left wing. We know he's mainly going to play center. And then everybody else is an unrestricted free agent. And that's where all of your wings were. There are unrestricted free agents right now. And Cogliano, Drouin, Duhaime, Kiviranta, Yakov Trenin, and then you can, Logan O'Connor, who is on the injured reserve list for Cat Friendly. So he's right or left wing as well. So that's what you got on the roster as far as what's available. Anybody sticking out to you? And again, you got to go kind of down this list because the guys up top, you're not going to be able to afford them. Yep.
Naturally, with these lists, you take the top big names off, throw them away. The Avs can't afford them. Start searching around the bargain bin. If you go to Cap Friendly and look at the UFAs on the left wing, you have Drouin, you have Cogliano right above those names. There is a name for a team that nobody likes, but Sammy Blais in St. Louis. Interesting.
I mean, let me look at what his stats were last year.
It's you're going off, but again, you're doing this with whatever position. When we talk about defense and potential goalies in the future, you're going off what you could possibly get and what you could rehab in his career and his potential. I feel like he would be an asset to the Colorado Avalanche. Might be a little rich, but I've always kind of liked his play. He's a little scrappy. He could turn it on if you need it. And especially with all those pieces, if you don't re-sign any of those names you listed, that's a huge amount going out. You have to put something back in there for this to be a competitive team. That could be a nice little Band-Aid to add to this team.
If nothing else, he gives you size.
Mm-hmm.
He's listed at 6'2", 206. So, I mean, you're likely not going to get Yakov Trenin back. So maybe he's there for that. Or wouldn't be against it. I mean, he had from the year prior with St. Louis, it's crazy. Like in 2022, 2023, he only played 31 games with St. Louis and scored 20 points. Now, he was traded. That was when he was traded from the Rangers to St. Louis. So if you're just going off of St. Louis, once he got there, played fantastic. 31 games, 20 points. In 40 games for the Rangers in that same season, he only had 5 points and they were all assists. So something clicked for him once he got to St. Louis. And then his first full year with St. Louis, 53 games last year and only 7 points total, 1 goal and 6 assists. I know it's not like his game to be a stat patter or anything like that. But for what he could do with that size, might not be a horrible guy to bring in.
And he's a momentum flipper. And you have that on defense for the Colorado Avalanche. You need that kind of forward, especially if you get that roaring 20s line back going with LOC coming back healthy. You can get Wood, Colton, and LOC kind of working together. Having somebody like Sammy on line 3 to really bolster line 2 and, give a little extra physicality for whoever you throw out in line 4. I feel like that might be something you want to kick the tires on.
Wouldn't be terrible.
Go get Tomas Tatar. He's out there. Why not?
He's on there. And the funny thing is, like when you're scrolling through this list, if you just organize it, obviously by AAV, you're just like looking through, and at the top, you got Tyler Bertuzzi's at the top, Jacob Varna's at the top, David Perron is up there, and you're just kind of scrolling. You get down and like, oh my God, there's Jonathan Drouin. It's just so weird to see him like that far down. It's funny you mentioned Sammy Blais because the one right above him, at least in the list that I'm looking at, James Van Riemsdyk. I know he's a little bit up there in age, but he has been a solid hockey player for his entire career, I feel. And like, I mean, he's at the age where what the Avalanche would want from him, I think is what he could give them. And he only cost $1 million last year for Boston. I don't really feel like he's done it. Like he's at the downside of his career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's going to be 30. I think he's 35 now. I think he just turned 35. So he'll be 35 for most of next year, for next season, I should say. So I would think whoever signs him is going to still be in that range. He's a veteran. He brings that veteran presence to your team. That might not be a bad signing for a depth winger, that you know what you're going to get out of him.
And Van Riemsdyk, every trade deadline, he's always the first name you hear attached to the Avs have interest and they're kicking the tires on Van Riemsdyk. He's been that way for the last decade for the Avalanche. He's the first name, and then everybody kind of dismisses it for the new shiny name, and they go chasing that. But you always hear Van Riemsdyk and the Avs every trade deadline, and it pops up in a day and disappears. And this could be the chance that the Avs go and say, okay, let's finally give this a chance. You're not going to cost us that much. We know you're 35, but hey, at least you got the jersey, put it in your collection. You have a couple of them now. I mean, I don't hate it, but again, we've talked about this on every position. If you go older like that, you're running the risk. It's the Avalanche. Do you want to commit to something that might fall apart and break? And then you're holding on to that contract and juggling Gabe's contract and whatever Nuke's contract is going to be, and whoever decides to get hurt on this Avalanche team.
Yeah. I mean, for the left wingers, like you see a lot of guys in their mid 30s on very low AAV deals, which are kind of where the Avalanche are going to be. So I think it could be an interesting one for them and who they look at, because if they move on from guys like Cogliano, if they move on from guys like Jack Johnson, who will get to a season grave in a minute. I know Jack Johnson plays on defense, so I'm just saying, like, if you're getting rid of those guys, do you want to bring in guys that are a couple years younger and someone like Van Riemsdyk to kind of like take that role over of like the quote unquote elder statesman of the roster, because it's not bad to have those guys. But if you're going to move on from ones that are maybe just getting a little bit too long in the tooth, do you go just a few years younger and kind of revamp it that way? It's an option. Now, there's another name on here who, if you're looking for size, you would go this route. But there's a history there, and there's not a friendly history. But we've seen this before, where the Avs will bring in someone who they just bring in when there was who was the hit? Someone put a hit on someone on the Avs. I can't remember, and then they brought him and they brought him in. I'm totally blanking on who it is. Was it Drouin? Didn't Drouin get into a fight with? I could be totally wrong on that. I can't remember. Someone in the comments, please. You probably are reading my mind right now and who I'm talking about. Just throw that in the comments. But
I'm struggling with Avs and physicality.
William Carrier is in here on Vegas. Big boy. 220. He's listed as 6'2", 220. That's what he's brought to do. Don't look at his numbers. Don't look at his stats, because they're very, they're okay. Last year he struggled a little bit, but for your depth guys, they're okay. But if you want to change how people are viewing the Avalanche, you maybe go out and get somebody like that. I don't know what he's commanding in the market right now. He didn't make a lot last year. I don't know how much of an increase he's looking for. I don't know if he's priced out of the Avalanche range. But if they want to change how other people are viewing them as this team that doesn't, have any retribution or anything like that, and go after guys that go after your guys, you bring in someone like that, who I know some Avs fans don't really like him because he's thrown some cheap shots around an Avalanche players. Totally get that. But I think Avalanche, the front office would look at it as like, well, we have to he's playing the game of hockey. Do we bring someone like that in? I don't know.
That's interesting. I've not given that aspect and that channel of thought. It might be something the Avs have to do, especially with piecing the roster together. You can't push this new younger. They're going to have to start calling up Eagles. You can't push our guys around. That might be something you have to do, but do you sacrifice a forward or do you go defenseman for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends on who's out there, where the numbers fit. Wouldn't matter to me where you wanted to do it, but you don't have to go get a roster full of. You just get him, and he's he'll just give you a different look. He's your Curtis McDermott that can give you more than what Curtis McDermott did,
and he's making bank, so you can't go get him.
Yeah, but I know people don't really like him. He had that one hit on Byram, I think that. So people don't like that stuff.
Yeah.
And they, hold that grudge, but if it's a business and you got to change the tone, maybe he's someone you look at.
Devin Dubnyk was a member of the Avalanche at one point.
Yeah. So there you go. So there's some left wingers. If anybody has any others that they are looking at that the Avs could go after, throw them in the comment section. One guy that we just mentioned, but could he be on his way out? We don't know about that, but we will talk about his last season with the Avs, or his most recent season with the Avs. We don't know if it's his last season yet. And that is Jack Johnson. So we'll get to his season grade right after this. All right. Yeah, Colorado Avalanche just seemed to love this guy. And they brought him in, won the cup with him. He goes and signs with Chicago, and at the trade deadline, they bring him back. And I mean, you have to like Jack Johnson, and he's a hardworking guy. He knows his role. He's going to be on that third pairing. And last year, 2 seasons ago now, there were many, many times where we kind of just were like, what is he doing? What is Jack Johnson doing? Where is he going? Why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? I don't feel like I said that at all this last year. And I don't know if it's just because he's actually been with them for multiple seasons now. He knows what his role is more defined and he's more comfortable in it. But I thought he did overall a pretty good job. So here's the stats the grades we're going to bring up for Jack Johnson. Because of that, I'm giving him a flat B, as are you. Social media was really close between B's and C's. So YouTube had 45% C, Twitter X had 43% C, Instagram had 52% B, and Threads at 64% C. So this was more one of the closer ones between 2 letter grades for Jack Johnson, mainly between B's and C's. And we'll get to some subtext people here in a minute. But I don't give Jack Johnson a B because I thought he performed like Cale Makar did. I thought like at his role, I thought he did it very well this year. And he was not as much of a liability as he has been in the seasons past.
He also, to Jack Johnson's credit, to everybody that's giving him a C, Jack Johnson had the most points in this last season since 2016-2017 when he was a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Nice.
So that should tell you something. Jack Johnson has also had more farewell tours than Kiss, but yet here he is again. And this was probably his best season in a Colorado Avalanche sweater. He didn't make those goofy, just boneheaded passes and lack of effort. He was a completely different human being. And I'm grading on what you gave us for this season and your potential, and he outperformed the status quo for Jack Johnson in an Avalanche sweater. He made some really good offensive plays. He had that Jack Johnson slap shot working. He had some hustle, locked down defensively. Like, I'm not saying like he was out of this world defensive guy, because he's not. But when he's on his game, it was noticeable. Like you were mentioning, we haven't mentioned those "what are you doing, Jack Johnson" moments. I remember this season us having a lot of post game. Can you believe Jack Johnson? Did you see him out there? Did you see that shot from Jack Johnson? He wasn't just out there; he was noticeable, which is previous Jack Johnson. He's noticeable when he's messing up.
Right. 100%. Like I said, there were so many times where you're just like, slap your forehead. What did he do there? I don't know if it was just because he's been around the team, been around the system for, multiple years. It just, something was different in him this year where he wasn't making those mistakes. And that's all I want from him. You don't need him to take over again. Like, that's not his role. He's not going to do that. He's never been that guy. But you're right about the shot. I thought it was always like he was never like not going to if he had an opportunity to take a shot, he was trigger happy. He was going to fire it, and he didn't even care. And it's and he did it not because he thought he's just scoring. There's brilliance in his scoring. It's just no. That's what you do. You shoot a puck on net, and good things happen when you shoot the puck to the net. Jack Johnson did that over and over and over again this year, and I whenever he was out there, I never had the thought of like, oh God, what's going to happen now? There was almost like this comfortability level of like, okay, like he'll get the puck on a stick, he'll get the puck out of the zone, and then his shift will be over. I thought he did well. I thought he had a really good season, and I know there's people that just want to like keep coming down on him because he's not like this. You have to grade him based on what he does.
Yep.
And what his role is on the team. And for this season, he did it well. He did it well to the tune of a B for us. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and before when he would try and get any offense going, it took him about a half a shift to get from one side of the ice to the other. And I feel like Jack Johnson had the healthiest legs he's had in Denver during this last season. And when he would, like, he was out skating players at times, and he had some breakout chances, and his shots were on point. They weren't just to dump it in. Like, you had to respect the shot of Jack Johnson at a couple times from like in the slot or on the blue line. He looked good and he made really good decisions. And I think, to your point, I think it goes to his confidence, and I think health plays a big factor. I think he looked like a completely different Jack Johnson, and I wonder what his percentage of health was in the previous two campaigns compared to last season.
He played 80 games this year.
Yeah,
he only missed 2 games. Like you said, the 16 points is the most in what'd you say, since 16-17. Yeah. But and plus minus is what it is. He was a plus 15, and he was out there. His average time on ice was just shy of 15 minutes. That's nothing to sneeze at. Like that, they're putting him out there. It's not like he's playing 10-minute third pairing minutes on ice. They kept him out there. So yeah, because of him having just a better season, I'm interested to see what they do with him. Do they feel like he can replicate that? He is 37 years old. So at some point, do the wheels come off? I don't know. Do the Avs want to take that chance? We'll see. Over on subtext is from Katie, new subtexter. Her name's Katie. Welcome aboard, Katie. She says a solid C. I don't exactly expect Jack Johnson to pull out Cale Makar level of awesome. And for the most part, I thought he was fine. But there were definitely moments that I thought he should have stepped up and didn't, especially in the playoffs.
Agreed.
But even in the playoffs, I don't feel like he had I think he just continued to do what he did. And that's the thing. If you feel like Jack Johnson had like a C grade in the regular season, fine. That's probably the grade you're going to give him in the postseason. Like, he didn't turn it up. He didn't bring it down in the postseason. He just continued to do what he did in the regular season into the playoffs.
And if you're asking Jack Johnson to step up, you're not in a good position. You want Jack Johnson to hold firm and just play your position. You don't want him to step up because he will break. And I mean, look at Jamie Benn's face in our graphic here. He's frustrated with Jack Johnson's play. This had to be in the playoffs. Like, he is just aggravated. And like, you just want Jack Johnson not to make mistakes and hold the line. And he did that. You don't want him to step up because he doesn't have the age or the skill capability to take over games. And I get the C because there have been invisible games throughout the season, but he's done a good job at not creating mistakes.
I mean, if you're asking Jack Johnson to step it up and take over games for you, like, you're in a world of hurt as it is as a team. So I didn't notice that Jamie Benn, what's the guy from Smurfs? Gargamel?
Yeah.
Is it Gargamel? Doesn't he look like Gargamel back there?
He's got quite the scowl.
Yeah. Vargar says Jack is what he is, a number 6 defender who isn't a disaster, and he can step up in the lineup in short stints. He's a great locker room guy. He gives him a solid B.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And you can't have banana pancakes without B, and that's Jack Johnson.
Oh, look at you. Bringing that out, man. And finally, Zach says B plus. He isn't a points guy, but for a third line D pairing, he does exactly what he's supposed to do. He also isn't scared to throw his body around when needed. No, and the Avs didn't have that a lot, clearly. I mean, he's not a spring chicken, so he's not going to put himself in. He's like 230 pounds, believe it or not, Jack Johnson. So yeah, he's a body. He's not going to go headhunt you, but he's out there. Like, you're not really just going to move him off the puck easily either. So, he plays that role, which the Avalanche kind of lack pretty much everywhere on the defensive side, with the exception of Josh Manson. So,
yeah, Jack Johnson is the epitome of he provides whatever you need, but you can't rely on whatever he gives.
And I got to give Madam Battleaxe a shout out too. She gave him a B. He doesn't get the respect he should, and if he does not come back, he can say he gave it the old college try. So I think he's, in some like weird way, he's like a fan favorite, and I don't think people realize how much of a fan favorite he is. He's like this low key fan favorite guy for the Avs. It's great.
Yeah, Curtis McDermott was a fan favorite, and look where that got him.
Oh boy, right in New Jersey. He's in right New Jersey.
Yep.
Yeah,
They love him.
I mean, everybody loves him wherever he goes, but because he just drops the Stanley Cup when he's too drunk.
They loved him in Anaheim too.
Yeah. So, all right, that is going to wrap it up for today's episode and for this week. So, thank you everybody for tuning in, making this your first listen of the day. Anything that happens over the weekend, we'll be discussing it on Monday, including that Valnichuskin stuff that we were talking about earlier. We'll definitely get to that on Monday. That will wrap it up. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we'll see you guys on Monday.